Hi, it's time for our Lego Bible story. I have my Lego-sized Jesus and all my Legos spread out. I hope you have yours ready too. Today's story comes from the Gospel according to Mark. Remember, the Gospels are the first 4 books of the New Testament. They give an account of what Jesus said and did when he was here. And in our Gospel today, Jesus had come back across the Sea of Galilee and got to the other side. And when he got there, a great crowd gathered. Then one of the leaders of the synagogue, named Jairus, came, and when he saw Jesus, he fell down and begged him repeatedly, "My little daughter is at the point of death. Come and lay hands on her so that she could be well." So Jesus went with him, and a large crowd followed him, and they pressed all around him. And there was a woman who'd been suffering. She'd been bleeding for 12 years. She had endured so much under so many different physicians. She spent all of her money, and she was no better. In fact, she was worse. And she had heard about Jesus, and she came thinking, if I just touch his clothes, I'll be made well. And so she did, and immediately the bleeding stopped, and she could feel in her body that she was better. And aware that the power had gone out of him, Jesus turned and said, "Who touched me?" And his disciples said to him, "You can see the crowd pressing in on you. How could you tell who touched you?" But the woman said, because she knew what had happened, she came in fear, and she fell down before Jesus and told him the whole truth. And he said to her, he called her daughter, and said, "Your faith has made you well. Go in peace and be healed of your disease." And while he was still talking, some people came from the synagogue leader's house to say, "Don't bother coming. The little girl has already died." And Jesus said to Jairus, the dad, "Do not fear, only believe." And so he went only then with Peter and James and John. And when they came to the house of the leader of the synagogue, he saw the commotion, and people were crying and weeping. And when he entered, he said, "Why are you making a commotion? Why do you weep? This child is not dead, but only sleeping." And they laughed at him. And then he put all of them outside and took the child's father and mother and those who were with him and went in to where the little girl was. And he took her by the hand and said, "Little girl, get up." And immediately the girl got up and began to walk about, and she was 12 years old. And at this, they were overcome with amazement. And Jesus strictly ordered them that no one should know this, and told them to give her something to eat. A lot going on in that story, isn't there? So Jesus came back across. And so now he was on the Jewish side. He'd been on the Gentile side of the Sea of Galilee. And we'll make this be. Jairus came and said, "Please, my daughter is sick." And so Jesus started to go with him. But as they went, a whole crowd came. And one of the people in that crowd was the woman who'd been bleeding for 12 years. And she touched Jesus. And he could feel the power go out of him. He probably did knock all the people down. But he could see how the disciples would wonder how he could even ask who touched him, because with all the people around, now Jesus is knocked down. We'll have him on the cross. But she fell down before him, and she told him the whole truth. I wonder if you've ever told somebody the whole truth. I wonder what the whole truth was. I wonder if she told him about how much pain she'd been in, and how desperate she was to feel better. And because she was bleeding, in that time she would have had to stay apart from everybody. And so maybe how lonely she was. And she knew, I wonder how she knew, that just touching his clothes could make her well. And it did, immediately, right away. And immediately Jesus knew. Immediately is a big word in Mark's gospel. I wonder how she felt when she knew that the bleeding had stopped. And how she felt when Jesus called her daughter. Because that's really saying that she's part of the family, isn't it? And she had been outside. Because of the bleeding, she wouldn't have been able to touch anybody or have anybody touch her. That just wasn't done. But to be called daughter was to say, oh, you are so close, you are part of my family. I wonder how that was for her. And then the other people came. And they said, don't even bother coming, because the little girl is already dead. That seemed kind of silly to me when I read it, because wouldn't you think that if the little girl had died, that Jesus could still comfort the parents? But Jesus said, don't fear, have faith. And so they got there, and everybody was crying and weeping because they said she was dead. And Jesus went with just some of his disciples. And he chased everybody else out, except for the girl's mom and dad and his disciples. And he told her to get up, and she did. I wonder what that was like for those parents. I wonder why Jairus thought that Jesus could make his little girl, who was so sick, well again. I wonder what he thought when he got back and everybody was crying. I wonder how all of the people knew that there was something about Jesus that could make them whole or well, that could restore them. Both of those things would have been really hard, to be really sick for 12 years or to have your little girl be almost dying. And I wonder if it's when things are feeling so hard and so tough, is that when we turn to Jesus more? Are we more likely to remember then about God? I wonder how much they believed that Jesus could actually help, and how much that they thought, we have nothing else to lose. Let's try this. It doesn't really tell us, but I wonder. I wonder what all the other people thought. I wonder if the disciples tried to protect Jesus a lot. I wonder if they were mad, because in those days, it would keep Jesus from being able to worship in the temple if he touched the woman or if he touched the little girl if she had died. And so I wonder if they were trying to protect Jesus from that. I wonder what it was like for Jesus to do the things that were against the rules to help the people. I wonder if he thought those were important rules or not, or how you tell when the rules are meant to be broken. I wonder where you would be in this story. Would you be trying to reach Jesus? Would you be pushing in around him just to see more? Would you be asking him to help either you or somebody you love? Would you be mad at him because you thought he didn't get there in time? Would you be one of the disciples trying to protect him? Would you be the one trying to help the others? Or would you be the one who needed help? I wonder if it's different on different days. I wonder if they were changed after they saw Jesus do this. I wonder what the little girl thought. Or the woman. I wonder what their lives were like after this. I wonder what you think is the most important part of this story. And I wonder what you'll build with your Legos, and if yours will stay standing up.